We're back here on the 15th of March, 1966. Today's mission is going to be to suppress enemy air defense threats around Dong Fong Tong. That cannot be a real name. Oh my god. Attack and destroy enemy anti-air artillery positions in the area. Now, as we saw in the last mission, where I was shot at by several SAMs, we're also going to be on the lookout for fire control radars to take those out. Fire control radars, of course, not only direct SAMs, but also tie into the anti-aircraft artillery net, and will actually, the AAA is radar guided, so radars are going to be first priority, and then any sort of missiles and machine guns after that. So call sign today is going to be Hammer. We're going to take 2 Crusaders. Takeoff time is 9:13 in the morning. Looking at our loadout here for both aircraft, we're going to take 2 cluster bombs, and then we're going to take 4 of these LAU-33 rocket packs. Here's our map. We're heading up into North Vietnam once again. Altitude is going to be 16,800 feet, finally. So a nice high altitude, get us way up out of range until we come down here at the objective point. Okay, here's the flight that will actually be performing the strike in Dong Fong Tong that we'll be providing cover for. These are this is Crab Flight. They're F4Bs off the Ranger, and there'll be 8 of them. They'll be striking, so we'll keep an eye out for them. Once they've hit the target and they're bugging out of the area, then that'll be our sign to get the hell out too. No point in sticking around where the baddies come get us. And today, Hammer 2 will be Ensign Tony Wyman, who only has 7 combat missions, no kills yet, has 80 skill and 80 experience though, so and 100% morale, so he's raring to go. So we'll take him out today, and we'll go suppress some anti-aircraft. All right, so that covers everything, and we're going to head up to the flight deck, and we'll see you up there as we blast off on our next mission into Vietnam. First order of business today is addressing the Crusader's silence regarding SAM-locks. I was afraid it might have been a glitch, but it's actually not. I looked into it, and this Crusader definitely does not have a radar warning receiver. This explains why I haven't been hearing SAMs or AAA locking onto us. Now, the pilots have heard word that coming down from on high, within a few months, Vought and the Navy will be advising us with upgrades to get a warning system in place, but until then, we'll continue to rely only on visual confirmation of SAM launches. Moving on to our main topic today, I'd like to talk about our primary adversary so far, and the only aircraft that we've gotten any kills on, the MiG-17. MiGs were a staple of the Soviet Air Force and any countries within the Soviet sphere of influence. They became a symbol of communism and represented the, quote, bad guys in any conflict or movie about conflict through the entire second half of the 20th century. In the movie Top Gun, for example, where there are no actual people villains, the fictional MiG-28s take on that role instead, and to almost a comical degree. The fake MiGs were actually F-5s painted all black, and the faceless pilots had black flight suits and deeply tinted helmet visors. They might as well have taken the extra step and had them wearing top hats with long mustaches that they could twirl. But despite its Hollywoodness, it's an interesting example that showcased the real paranoia that any MiG aircraft was considered ominous and dangerous. This legendary status of the MiGs as worthy adversaries of the Western powers is due to the fact that members of the MiG family made a showing in every conflict of the Cold War. Soviet aircraft production was more consolidated than U.S. production, with only about a dozen companies designing aircraft, and although the design bureaus of Ilyushin, Sukhoi, Tupolev, Yakolev, and others all built important aircraft for the Soviet Union, It was the fighters of Mikoyan-Gurevich that most tangled with American pilots, and therefore left a lasting impression. Mikoyan-Gurevich Design Bureau was established in 1939, led by Artyom Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich. The contraction of the two names of these men is where the designation MiG comes from, MiG, and why when you see it written, the M and the G are capitalized. The company's first fighter was the MiG-1, produced in 1940 for World War II. The MiG-9 was the company's first jet in 1946, and experience with that led eventually to the MiG-15 in 1947. The MiG-15 would famously duke it out in the skies over Korea against F-86 Sabres. The MiG-17 Fresco began in 1949 as a variant of the MiG-15, attempting to fix several problems with the design. Because of this, the two aircraft look very much alike. However, the upgrades to the 17 became so numerous that it was no longer considered a MiG-15 and received its own designation. For example, the MiG-15 was uncontrollable at speeds above Mach 0.92, so the 17 was designed to safely approach and pass Mach 1. It had thinner and more highly swept wings, and employed a third wing fence and a ventral fin for stability. Though not originally designed with one, later 17s would equip the very first Russian afterburners. Production of the 17 began in 1951, though no planes made it into the Korean War. In 1953, the MiG-17F day fighter was introduced, which is the version we most commonly fight against here in the game. The F version had the new VK-1F engine with afterburner, radar gun sights, which were copied from a captured F-86, and improved ejection seats for pilot safety. The plane had 3 cannons, twin 23mm guns with 160 rounds total, and a large 37mm cannon with 40 rounds. The 37mm was slow firing, and finding space in the aircraft for ammunition was difficult. But a single round could inflict enough damage to destroy a bomber. The plane, additionally, had hard points for bombs, but the bomb load was considered light compared to its contemporaries, so mostly just drop tanks were mounted. The MiG-17 PF, known as the Fresco D, was the all-weather variant, with a search radar and with a removed 37mm gun replaced by a third 23mm. Much later, the Fresco E would be introduced, which carried AA-1 air-to-air missiles. MiG-17 pilots could just exceed supersonic in a dive, but speed was actually not a friend to the aircraft. One pilot reported that above 450 knots, the plane simply could not turn, and he could see the control stick actually flexing in his hand the more he tried to pull on it. Instead, the strength of the Fresco was its turning game. Slow and nimble, the 17 could outmaneuver any U.S. jet at the time and bring its devastating cannons to bear. Vietnamese MiG pilots in combat also found help from an unexpected ally, the U.S. government. The U.S. had adopted policies for years that now put American pilots at a disadvantage. Onboard guns and radar gun sights had been removed from modern designs as obsolete. Close dogfighting had been declared a thing of the past, so American fighters were designed for straight-line speed and altitude to knock down lumbering bombers. Also associated with this, American pilots were not trained in any sort of basic dogfighting maneuvers. The rules of engagement in Vietnam prohibited pilots from firing missiles until positive visual identification of a target had been made. This forced U.S. pilots to have to close on MiGs, rendering the long range of Sparrow missiles useless, and bringing the Americans right into the MiG's engagement envelope. The MiG-17 shot down 71 American aircraft during the war, including one F-8 Crusader from VF-211 on June 21 of 1966. 3 of the 16 North Vietnamese aces of the war were MiG-17 pilots. They were Nguyen Van Bay with 7, Lu Hoi with 6, and Li Hai also with 6. The American fighter community was shocked at the outset of the war that the obsolete subsonic fighters were shooting down their sophisticated supersonic aircraft, and this would lead to investigations by the Navy and Air Force. The ALT report by the Navy and Operation Red Baron by the Air Force both arrived at the same conclusions, namely that the experts had been wrong in thinking that close gunfighting was not worth addressing anymore. These reports directly led to the opening of the Navy Fighter Weapons School, also known as Top Gun, at Miramar Naval Air Station in San Diego, as well as the Air Force Weapons School at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. It also led to the U.S. acquiring 2 Syrian MiG-17Fs, provided by Israel, to test in secret at the Groom Lake testing area. Groom Lake is known more popularly as Area 51, and had been built in 1955 by the CIA for Lockheed to test the U-2 in secret. This would also become the home of other secret aircraft such as the SR-71 and F-117. The MiG-17 was also built in China under license, and their version was known as the Shenyang J-5. The J-5 is identical to the MiG, and in fact, Vietnamese records do not differentiate between the types, considering them essentially the same aircraft. Here in the game, we can tell the difference between the two because MiGs usually have the bare aluminum finish, while the J-5s have the snake paint scheme, that is, the green with white dot scheme. The Soviets had given a, quote, gift of 35 MiG-17s to North Vietnam in 1962, and North Vietnamese pilots were trained in China and the Soviet Union. Both countries kept a regular flow of aircraft into Vietnam during the war to replace losses. Unlike Korea, where it was an open secret that Soviet and American pilots battled each other in the air, Soviet pilots were restricted from flying combat missions in Vietnam, and no Russian pilot has come forward claiming to have done so. However, Soviet SAM commanders did deploy to Vietnam through 1965 and 66, until Vietnamese operators could be trained instead, and Russian-directed SAMs shot down 48 American aircraft. Chinese pilots were similarly restricted from flying in actual Vietnamese aircraft. However, on several occasions, the U.S. and Chinese aircraft fought, and it was not under any pretense of the Vietnam War. The island of Hainan, which is the landmass just north of Yankee Station that we see all the time and actually fly quite close to, is actually Chinese territory. And several times the Chinese felt that Americans were invading its airspace and shot at American aircraft with SAMs, MiGs, and even armed trawlers down in the ocean. American types that were actually shot down included an F-104, F-4 Phantoms, A-6 Intruders, and A-1 Sky Raiders. Many of these pilots were killed or imprisoned in China, the details of which have not been widely known and were not officially released until 2015. The MiG-17 Fresco saw a long service life, with 20 countries all over Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa, with over 10,000 aircraft being built in total. In Vietnam, the MiG-17/J-5 was flown up until the late 1990s, when it was finally retired. As of 2018, 67 years after its introduction, it is still being flown in service with several air forces in Africa, including Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Sudan, and Madagascar. The J-5 is still in use in North Korea. Alright, you can see here on our ground radar, just under 20 miles, we have a large concentration up there to our right. That is the city, and those are the targets that we're going to be looking at destroying. We're just coming feet dry, or about to come feet dry over the coastline here. We're coming in from the south. Crab Flight is just about to hit their initial point up there to the north, so they'll be coming in from the, they'll be coming in from the east. Oop, there we go. We're definitely feet dry now. And we're going to turn north and head right to that city there.
Hammer, lead, red crown, bogies, 12 o'clock, 50 miles, Angel 15, heading southeast, stay sharp, Fox 1, Fox 2.
Let's get back to 17,000. So you can see the river there. And then all of the, those are all ground units around it. The Crab Flight will be coming in and striking something that's actually on that river. So that's the direction that we want to kind of head. A little bit to my left, I guess. And right down there, if we can, whoa, if we can see it. There we go. That little town with the bridge going across.
1 o'clock, 10 miles. Angel 10, heading south.
Oop, 10 miles. Alright, let's turn this cheater on here.
Red Crown. Copy that.
I'm going to start descending down out of the clouds. Got my cluster bomb selected. And tell wingman to attack my target.
Attacking your target.
Now we have a KS-12 selected. I'm going to go for that one.
Target destroyed. Fox 2. Red Crown. Gunslinger lead. Passing waypoint 7. Gunslinger 1.
You can see
Red
flak
Crown.
just ahead of us.
Copy
I think
that.
those are the F4s coming in. There's this son of a bitch.
I've got a spy.
I just heard him. Whoa! There's an F4 right there, flashing by the cockpit.
Target destroyed. Fox 2.
This is good. Releasing that cluster bomb. Missed with it, though. Figures. There's a bit of a railroad underneath us. Looks like it's kind of messed up. Oh, we're taking fire from something. I guess from a lot of things. That sounds like a MiG engine nearby. And there goes our cluster. For a direct hit this time. Alright, Crab has cleared the area. Let's get our guy back into formation. That's definitely a MiG engine. Oh no! Shit, I think we've lost Ensign Wyman. Here's a guy. Oh, let's switch to bore sight mode. There we go. Now we're tracking him. Switch to cannon. We're not catching up to him very fast, are we? Come on, we gotta close this circle here. I know this guy's just stringing me along so that his wingman can come in and get me, but... Come on! Guns, guns, guns! Jesus! Woo! There he goes. That's kill number 5, by the way. Whoa! I'm going head to head. Oh, red out. Alright, let's go vertical. We're almost 90 degrees straight up. And then we'll roll over on my back. Oh, there's random gunfire coming up at me from this MiG. What are you doing, guy? There he is off to my left. Oh, and there's 2 of them. Oh, we're at 150 knots. There goes a guy right to my left. I wonder if Red Crown has any help they can send my way. Nice. Still have more than 3,000 pounds. I think those are the friendlies. Yeah, those are F4s. Oh, he's got me in a scissors. Definitely not something I should be doing. Scissoring with the more nimble MiGs, but doesn't matter. I've got him out in front of me now, anyways. Yes! Whoa! I got a piece of that, dude. Where'd you go, buddy? Oh yeah! Burner on as we come back up underneath him. Are you still maneuvering, or are you just going down, guy? What's going on? Oh, I think he's toast. Oh, he's going down. He's gonna impact soon. That's for Wyman, you son of a bitch. Alright, let's get the hell out of here. Set the radar back up for search mode, although hopefully not going to need that anymore. And I'm going to zoom back up to 17,000 feet here. Still 2,000 pounds of fuel left. That'll be plenty. Let's look at our aircraft here. Looks like we're free of damage. This time out, that's nice. Ended up not using these rockets. I'm just going to bring them back to the ship and make use another time. I think those F4s are still engaging targets down to my left. Oh, and we're coming up on that waypoint. There we go. Let's get well above the clouds. Let's just shoot for the stars a little bit. 25,000 feet, that sounds like a good level off point. Now you can see, before I climbed, let's take a look here. Before I climbed, I was set at 6,000 pounds per hour of fuel flow. Now just by gaining altitude, we're down to about 3.5, so I'm going to bring it back up to 6, which I can't even do. So at full throttle, I'm at 5,000, so actually, you know what, we'll just leave it at 4 for cruise, demonstrating that with higher altitude, the jet engines become much more fuel efficient. And so actually being at a very high altitude like this will actually save us some gas. Set the ground map mode. Ground radar actually goes up to 60 miles, whereas the air radar is limited to 40. Getting the weight down of a Navy aircraft for landing on a carrier is an extremely important part of the carrier landing, and not really talked about very much. But getting the weight of an aircraft down to a maximum landing weight by dumping fuel was a procedure that I saw daily when watching flight ops out to sea. Obviously, if you return to a land base with more fuel than you calculated, it doesn't really matter. You have plenty of runway space to land. You can make your approach at whatever speed you want. But coming aboard a carrier, many other factors come into play. Like a catapult launch, the arresting gear must be calibrated for each landing to properly stop the different type of aircraft coming in. Obviously, a big, heavy F-14 needed different stopping power than, say, a light A-4. Having extra fuel on board can change the weight of that aircraft outside of an envelope that the arresting gear is being calibrated for. Also, having that extra fuel can mean a faster approach speed in order to avoid stalling, of course, which means more deck is needed to stop once that plane touches down. It would also affect the angle of attack on approach, which is measured in Navy planes by this little rectangle that's just to the left of the HUD that only lights up when the gear is down. Probably seen it on a bunch of my landings now. Pilots fly approaches at set airspeeds and then set the angle of attack meter into the green to assure proper attitude for touchdown and for catching wires, and also to avoid the really bad sink rates where you might strike the deck. So with all that, it's important to ensure that a landing aircraft is within the prescribed weight limits for landing at sea. There's not much mention of fuel dumping online. I did a quick search and it didn't really come up, other than people saying it was for emergency purposes only and that fighters do not routinely do it, but that's not the case. Probably because it seems very wasteful and not environmentally sound. It's probably not trumpeted from the rooftops, but almost every plane that I saw land over 4 years of being on the ship dumped fuel, so it's definitely a routine procedure. Speaking of jet fuel, I have a funny sea story about that. Military jet fuels have over 10 categories, right? JP1 through 10, and then a couple of extras for specialty uses above that. And each one is used for a different variety of service. JP4 might be the most familiar to many of you. It was the fuel that the Air Force used from 1951 up until 1995 when they switched to JP8. But it seems to be the most well-known type of fuel in the flight simulation community for some reason. I feel like I've seen a lot of fighter pilot slang for, burning up JP4 or, whatever catchy way they say it to sound cool on forum comments and video comments and whatever. But the Navy uses JP5 and has forever, since 1952, in fact. JP5 is specifically designed for shipboard use, where fires are deadly and the risk to start one is great. JP5 has a higher flash point at 140 degrees Fahrenheit and contains additional complex additives to prevent it from burning anywhere but in an engine. So this is the fuel that I was always familiar with because we dealt with it specifically. An unexpected side benefit is that it makes a great cleaning solution. The Enterprise engine rooms and many of our spaces that we owned elsewhere on the ship all had JP5 manifolds and pipes running through them, as the fuel tanks were located in the bottom of the ship, along with the clean water, sewage, oil, and ballast tanks. There was definitely cross-contamination somewhere in the system because water from the drinking fountains almost always had a twinge of jet fuel taste to it, even though we were always assured that they sampled the water and there was no jet fuel in it. You could definitely taste it. But someone had found many years in the past that JP5 would take dirt and grime off of all of our white pipes and equipment really, really well. So we would fill up a cleaning spray bottle with jet fuel from a vent line on the manifold in engine room lower level. One, it worked better than the approved cleaning spray, and two, we could never get any approved cleaning spray from supply when we asked for it, so we had to find another solution. Now, I said earlier that a puddle of JP5 is specifically designed to not burn. However, it will ignite at lower temperatures when it is atomized, such as when you spray it in a fine mist from a cleaning spray bottle. Then you can light it with a lighter and it makes awesome, enormous fireballs in the air. This was a regular time waster for us, but one day I was burning JP5 in lower level, because I had nothing better to do, and the whole place stunk like burnt fuel, as if we were up on the flight deck during flight ops. It smelled like there was an F-14 running down in my engine room at my watch station. And then at one point, somebody came down from engine room upper level and told me to cut it the hell out because the damn executive officer was visiting randomly, and he was talking to all the guys upstairs. So he either didn't notice or thought it was maybe coming through the vents, but we all laughed really hard at the thought of him scratching his head later and wondering why the spaces furthest from the airplanes smelled like jet engines running. Oh, low fuel light just came on. Coming across the deck, pitching up just a little bit, and 1, 2 victory rolls, pulling into the brake, and there we go, speed brake out, pulling into our overhead 360, less than 200 knots, gear out, flaps out, hook is out. And we're just abreast of the landing area now, so I'm going to make my turn to base and final. Rolling onto the center line here. Hammer 1 has the ball. 150 knots.
I'm bingo fuel.
Oh, almost forgot those brakes. Whoa, that was a little careeny. But to hell with it. We made it. Hook. Flaps. And as we shut the engine down, we've completed, well, another mission. I don't know how successful it was. I guess it was successful. We lost Ensign Wyman, but we downed 2 more aircraft. We only destroyed, I don't know, 1 AAA. Those F4s were in and out of there so fast. And then the MiGs descended on us, so I don't even know if they hit their target, which I'm assuming was the bridge, but I don't really know. But that'll be it for this one. Let's go down below decks and see what the dilly is. So our objective was to suppress enemy air defenses around Dongfang Tong. Flight time was 37.5 minutes. Result was mission was aborted. 2 additional enemy aircraft were destroyed. 1 F-8 was lost. However, the rating was a success for a score of 500. So the game just went wonky on this one. As soon as I started the mission, Red Crown told me that the mission was successful and to RTB, and that was before I even blasted off the carrier. So we went anyways. I don't know why it thinks it was aborted. Maybe there was actually primary targets highlighted in the target area, except that I didn't see any when we were there. So who the hell knows, but whatever. Mission was aborted. Go screw. I mean, it gave us a success anyway, so that's all that matters. We got a success. Oh, let's take a look. Oh no! Ensign Wyman, POW, shot down right over Dongfang Tong. Knocked down by that MiG, I believe. Didn't have a chance to do anything. Didn't fire. I thought I heard him firing rockets. Oh, he did. He fired 5 rockets and then didn't hit anything. Well, we fired 100 rounds from our cannons and got 2 kills with that. That's pretty good. That's just a couple of short bursts from all 4 cannons, and we were able to down 2 aircraft with that. And then we got 1 hit with the cluster bomb. Let's take a look real quick. Okay, so here we go. So at 9:26 and 35 seconds, we had this J5 Fresco firing both its 23mm cannons and its giant 37mm at Ensign Wyman, and he was actually hit by that N37 cannon, which is humongous. My God, that must have blown his Crusader apart. He was hit by the cannon twice, actually, shot down near the Tanhua transshipment point. Damn. Well, that's it for this mission. Felt a little bizarre about this one. Not our usual rousing success, even though it says it was a success. But, oh, you know what? Here we go. Lieutenant Commander Devin Horner now has 6 air-to-air kills. I'm now an official ace. The first ace, apparently, of VF211 here in the campaign. So that's pretty cool. Well, thanks for stopping by and watching this one. And we'll see you next time for more flying and fighting with VF211 in good old Vietnam, tropical paradise. All right, see ya.